Lieutenant Juan Kim stood at the viewport of the Alliance flagship Dauntless watching as another friendly ship exploded in a silent burst of orange and white. His hands gripped the railing until his knuckles turned white. The battle was not going well. "All ships, fall back to Defense Point Zeta," came Admiral Park's voice over the comm. The old man sounded tired. They were all tired. For 3 years, the United Galactic Alliance had fought the Krell swarm. For 3 years, they had lost ground. Today, at the Orion Nexus, the last major defense fleet was being torn apart. "Lieutenant Kim, report to command deck." His comm unit buzzed. Juan took one last look at the battle. The insect-like Krell ships moved in perfect formation, their organic hulls glinting in the light of the nearby star. They had already destroyed half the Alliance fleet. It would not be long now. On the command deck, chaos reigned. Officers ran between stations, shouting orders. In the center, Admiral Park stood over the holographic display, his face grim. "Lieutenant Kim," the Admiral said, "I have new orders for you." Juan saluted sharply. "Yes, sir." "The Orion Nexus is lost. We cannot hold this position." The Admiral's words were simple but heavy. "You are being reassigned." Juan blinked in surprise. "Reassigned? Now? In the middle of a battle?" "You're being sent to Sunwa 7. Juan knew the planet. A desert world at the edge of Alliance space. Not important enough for a full garrison, but still with a small outpost. "But sir, the battle." "The battle is lost, Lieutenant." Admiral Park's voice was flat. "The war may be lost, but as long as we have soldiers at posts throughout the galaxy, we keep fighting." A nearby console exploded in a shower of sparks. The ship rocked as Krell weapons found their mark. "Report to Shuttle Bay 3. Now." The Admiral handed him a data chip. "Your orders. The ship leaves in 10 minutes, with or without you." Juan took the chip, saluted again, and ran. The corridors of the Dauntless were filled with smoke and wounded crew members. Emergency lights flashed red. Juan helped a fallen technician to a medical station before continuing his race to the shuttle bay. As he ran, his mind filled with questions. Why send him away now? Why Sunwa 7? The planet had no strategic value that he knew of. In the shuttle bay, a small transport was waiting. Most of the other evacuation ships were already gone. A blue-skinned Novan pilot waved him over. "Last passenger. Hurry." Juan jumped aboard just as the bay doors began to close. Through the viewport, he watched the Dauntless grow smaller as they pulled away. The once proud flagship was now burning in a dozen places. A shuttle was crowded with officers from different Alliance species. A tall, thin Silurian scientist looked at him with large, sad eyes. "It is the end, yes? The Alliance falls today." Juan did not answer. He strapped himself into his seat as the shuttle accelerated away from the battle. Through the rear viewport, he watched the final moments of the Orion Nexus defense. The Krell ships surrounded the remaining Alliance vessels. The Dauntless fought to the end, its weapons blazing against the darkness. Then, in a flash brighter than the nearby star, it was gone. Several of the aliens on the shuttle made gestures of mourning. A Tellurian officer openly wept, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly. The 17 species united could not stop them. The Silurian scientist whispered, "What hope remains?" Juan closed his eyes. He thought of Earth, so far away, of his family in Buzan. Would the Krell reach them soon? The shuttle jumped to light speed, leaving the battle behind. Juan looked at the data chip in his hand. His new assignment: Sunwa 7, a desert outpost at the edge of nowhere. The war seemed lost, but as long as one human, one Alliance soldier remained, Juan would not surrender. There had to be a way to fight back. There had to be hope somewhere in this vast galaxy. As the shuttle carried them through the darkness between stars, Juan made a silent promise. He would find that hope, even if he had to dig it out of the desert sands of Sunwa 7 with his bare hands. Sunwa 7 was hot, very hot. Juan wiped sweat from his forehead as he stepped off the transport ship. 3 suns burned in the sky, turning the vast desert into a sea of golden light. The air smelled of dust and metal. Lieutenant Kim, a short man in a faded Alliance uniform, approached. "I'm Captain Lee. Welcome to the edge of nowhere." The base was smaller than Juan expected. Just a cluster of low buildings surrounded by a force field. Beyond the barrier, sand stretched to the horizon in all directions. "Not much to look at," Captain Lee said, "but it's home now. Admiral Tak wants to see you right away." They walked through the base. Juan saw few soldiers. Most people wore the gray coats of scientists or the blue uniforms of support staff. "What is this place?" Juan asked. "Why is the Alliance protecting an empty desert?" Captain Lee shrugged. "Ask the Admiral." Admiral Tak's office was cool compared to the outside. The old man sat behind a desk piled with reports. His face was lined with age and worry. "Lieutenant Kim, your record is impressive." Tak's voice was rough, like sand grinding on metal. 3 battles against the Krell. 2 medals for bravery." "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet." Tak stood up. "You're here because we're next. The Krell will come to Sunwa 7 soon." Juan frowned. "Why?" "There's nothing here." "Position." Tak pointed to a star map on the wall. "From here, the Krell can attack 3 Alliance worlds. We must hold this base as long as possible." "How many troops do we have?" 50 soldiers, some scientists." "Not enough." Tak's eyes were hard. "Not nearly enough." Juan felt his stomach tighten. 50 soldiers against a Krell swarm. It would be a slaughter. "Get settled," Tak said. "Report tomorrow at dawn." Dismissed. Juan's quarters were small but private. He unpacked his few belongings, then decided to explore the base. In the mess hall, he sat alone with his food until someone approached his table. "New arrival. Mind if I join you?" The woman was tall with short black hair. Her coat marked her as a scientist. "Please," Juan said. "I'm Dr. Jin." She sat down. "You must be the lieutenant from the Orion Nexus." Juan nodded. "Juan Kim." "Bad business at the Nexus," she said. "News travels fast, even here. The Alliance took heavy losses." Dr. Jin studied him. "Yet you don't seem ready to give up." "We can't give up." She smiled. "Good. I like that." Juan looked at her more carefully. "What do scientists study in an empty desert?" Dr. Jin's eyes lit up. "Empty." "Oh no, Lieutenant. This desert is full of secrets." She pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. It projected an image of cave walls covered in strange markings. "Cave paintings," she explained, "made by the original settlers of this planet, thousands of years ago." Juan leaned closer. The paintings showed tiny stick figures of people. Above them were huge curved shapes that looked like worms, he asked. "Not just worms." Dr. Jin's voice dropped to a whisper. "Massive predators. The largest creatures ever recorded in the Alliance database." "Where are they now?" "Gone. Or hiding." She switched the image to a scan of the desert. "But look at these seismic readings from last month." The scan showed movement deep below the sand. Something big. The natives called them jangmi, roses, because of their red color and the way they opened the sand when they surfaced. Dr. Jin turned off the device. "I believe they're still here, sleeping underground." Juan was about to ask more when alarms blared throughout the base. Everyone in the mess hall jumped to their feet. "What's happening?" Juan asked. Captain Lee ran in, his face pale. "Krell ships. They've entered the system." Juan's blood ran cold. It was happening again. But this time, there was nowhere to retreat. Dr. Jin grabbed his arm. "Meet me in Lab 3 after your briefing. I have something to show you, something that might help us." As Juan rushed to the command center, the ground beneath his feet trembled slightly. He paused, remembering the seismic scans. Something was moving deep below the base. Something ancient. Something that might be their only hope. 3 days, Admiral Tack said, pointing to the holographic display. That's how long until the main Krell force reaches us. The command room was packed with officers. Everyone looked tense. Scout ships will arrive sooner, Tack continued. We must prepare for ground attack. Juan studied the display. The Krell fleet was smaller than at Orion Nexus, but still too big for their tiny base to stop. Questions? Tack asked. Juan raised his hand. Sir, what exactly are we protecting here? 50 soldiers can't stop a Krell invasion. The room fell silent. Tack's face hardened. We buy time, Lieutenant. Every day we hold gives other worlds a chance to prepare. He looked around the room. Dismissed. Check your assignments. As the others filed out, Juan headed to Lab 3 to find Dr. Jin. The base was busy with preparation. Soldiers moved weapons. Engineers checked the shields. Lab 3 was at the edge of the base, half buried in the sand. Juan knocked on the door. Enter, called Dr. Jin's voice. Inside, screens covered the walls. Each showed different scans of the desert. Jin sat surrounded by strange equipment, her eyes bright with excitement. Lieutenant, perfect timing. She waved him over. Look at this. The main screen showed a heat scan of the deep desert. Something massive moved beneath the sand. What am I looking at? Juan asked. A Jangmi. Jin pointed to the shape. Young one, by its size. Maybe only 30 meters long. Only 30. Juan blinked in surprise. Adults can reach 100 meters or more. Jin's voice was full of wonder. These creatures have evolved perfectly for desert life. They sense vibrations through the sand to hunt. Fascinating, Juan said, but how does this help against the Krell? Jin smiled. I need to show you something in the field. Can you come on patrol tomorrow? Before Juan could answer, his comm unit buzzed. Lieutenant Kim, came Captain Lee's voice. You're assigned to perimeter patrol. East Sector, 500 hours. Perfect, Jin said. I'll join you. The next morning was cooler, with only 2 suns visible above the horizon. Juan and Jin rode a small hover vehicle across the desert. 2 soldiers followed in another vehicle. Stop here, Jin said after they traveled 5 kilometers from the base. They halted near a cluster of large rocks. Jin pulled out a scanning device and walked in circles, checking readings. What are we looking for? Juan asked. Tunnels, Jin replied. The Jangmi create networks beneath thee. The ground suddenly shifted beneath their feet. Juan shouted a warning, but too late. The sand collapsed, opening a hole that swallowed him and Jin. They fell, sliding down a tunnel of smooth sand. Juan tried to grab something, anything, but the walls were too slick. They landed in a pile of soft sand at the bottom. Dr. Jin, Juan called, coughing up dust. Are you hurt? I'm fine, she answered, her voice echoing. Amazing. We found one. Juan activated his light. They were in a massive underground cavern. The walls were smooth, as if something huge had moved through repeatedly. A Jangmi tunnel, Jin whispered, scanning with her device. Recent, too. Juan tried his comm unit. No signal. We need to find a way back up. A low rumble shook the cavern. Dust fell from above. Juan reached for his weapon. Something's coming, he said quietly. The rumble grew louder. The far wall of the cavern began to crumble. Don't move, Jin whispered. No sudden movements. The wall broke open. A massive round head pushed through, larger than their hover vehicle. Red scales gleamed in the light. Behind the head, a body thicker than a transport ship stretched back into darkness. A young Jangmi. The creature had no eyes, but its skin rippled with sensing organs. It opened circular jaws lined with teeth. Juan stood frozen. One bite could cut him in half. The Jangmi paused. Its head tilted, as if listening. Then it moved, not toward them, but to the side, where Juan's neural implant had fallen during the fall. The small device, standard issue for Alliance officers, emitted a soft hum. The Jiangmi moved closer, almost gently. It touched the implant with the tip of its massive head. "It's responding to the frequency," Jin said in amazement. "Juan, the neural implant. It communicates at a frequency the Jiangmi understands." The creature turned toward them, sensing their vibrations, but it didn't attack. Instead, it seemed curious. An idea formed in Juan's mind. A crazy, desperate idea. "Dr. Jin," he said slowly, "I think I know how we might fight the Krell." "Absolutely not." Admiral Tak slammed his fist on the desk. "It's suicide." Juan stood at attention in the Admiral's office. Dr. Jin waited nervously beside him. "Sir, with respect, we have few options," Juan said. "The Krell will arrive tomorrow. Our defenses won't hold. So your plan is to find a giant worm and, what? Ask it to fight for us." Tak laughed without humor. Dr. Jin stepped forward. "Admiral, the Jiangmi showed unusual response to Lieutenant Kim's neural implant. This isn't random. There's a connection." Tak rubbed his temples. "Even if this works, and that's a big if, how do you plan to find an adult worm in time?" "I've tracked their movement patterns," Jin said, showing a map on her tablet. "The largest readings are here, 30 kilometers west." Tak studied the map for a long moment. Finally, he sighed. "The Krell scouts landed an hour ago. Main force arrives tomorrow at dawn." He looked at Juan. "You have until midnight. After that, we need every soldier at the base." Juan saluted. "Thank you, sir." As they left, Tak called after them. "Kim, if you die out there, I'll be very annoyed." The desert was cooling as the three suns began to set. Juan drove the hover vehicle at top speed, while Jin checked her instruments. "Stop here," she said when they reached a flat area surrounded by rock formations. The sand looked different, redder, with strange circular patterns. Jin pointed to her scanner. "Something big is down there. Really big." Juan checked his equipment. He wore a modified neural implant on each temple. Jin had adjusted them to send stronger signals. "Remember," Jin said, "the implants can project basic emotional patterns, not words or commands. The Jiangmi won't understand orders." "So I project friendship?" Juan asked. Jin shook her head. "Start with curiosity. Then move to mutual threat. These are ancient predators, not pets." Juan activated the devices. They hummed softly. "Now we wait," Jin said. They sat in silence. One sun disappeared, then another. The desert turned cold. "Nothing's happening," Juan said after an hour. "Wait," Jin whispered. "Feel that." The ground trembled slightly, then stronger. The hover vehicle began to shake. "It's coming." Jin grabbed her scanner. "It's huge. The biggest reading I've seen." Sand erupted 50 meters away. A massive shape burst through, rising into the sky like a building. The adult Jiangmi was enormous, at least 100 meters long. Its red scales glittered in the last sunlight. Its round mouth could swallow their vehicle whole. "Don't move," Jin whispered. "Let it sense you." The Jiangmi turned toward them, sensing the neural implants. It moved closer, sliding over the sand like a massive ship. Juan's heart hammered in his chest. He focused on projecting curiosity through the implants. The worm paused. Its skin rippled with sensing organs. It came closer, its massive head now just 20 meters away. "It's responding," Jin said quietly. "Try mutual threat now." Juan changed his focus, thinking of the Krell as a shared enemy. He pictured their insect ships, their weapons. The Jiangmi reared back suddenly. Had he angered it? "It's confused," Jin said. "Try again." Softer. Juan tried a different approach. Instead of showing the Krell as enemies, he pictured them as prey. the Jangmi as a hunter, himself as an ally. The giant worm lowered its head. It moved closer, more cautiously now. "It's working," Jin whispered. The Jangmi's head was now just meters away. Juan could see every detail of its armored skin, the complex sensing organs pulsing along its sides. Slowly, very slowly, Juan raised his hand. The worm didn't retreat. He took a step forward, then another. "Careful," Jin warned. Juan reached out. His hand touched the Jangmi's skin. It felt warm, alive. The creature didn't pull away. A strange sensation filled Juan's mind. Not words, but feelings. Ancient instincts. Hunger. Curiosity. Power. "I'll call you son," Juan said quietly. "After this desert." The Jangmi, son, moved slightly, as if nodding. In the distance, the sky lit up with flashes. The Krell scout ships were attacking the base. "We need to go," Juan said to son, projecting urgency through the implants. "We have enemies to fight." The great worm turned toward the lights. It seemed to understand. For the first time since the fall of Orion Nexus, Juan felt hope. Dawn broke over Sunwa 7. The sky filled with red light as the first sun rose. But there were other lights too. The burning engines of Krell ships entering the atmosphere. "They're coming," Captain Lee said, looking through binoculars. Hundreds of dropships. Juan stood on the base's highest point. Dr. Jin worked on his neural implants, making final adjustments. "Will it work?" Admiral Tak asked. He looked older today, more tired. "Sun responded to me yesterday," Juan said. "But controlling a giant worm in battle? I don't know." Tak nodded. "The Alliance sent a message. No help is coming. We're on our own." They watched as the Krell ships landed 10 kilometers from the base. Soon, thousands of insect soldiers poured out. They looked like giant ants walking on 2 legs, with 4 arms holding weapons. "They'll reach us in 1 hour," Lee said. "Where is your worm friend?" Tak asked. As if answering, the ground trembled. Sand erupted 3 kilometers away. Sun rose from the desert, towering above the dunes. "There," Juan said. "I need to get closer." Tak looked at the giant worm, then at the approaching Krell army. He made his decision. "Take a hoverbike. We'll give you cover fire if needed." Juan climbed onto a small hoverbike. Dr. Jin handed him a stronger neural device. "This will help maintain connection at longer range," she said. "Be careful." Juan rode out across the desert. The bike skimmed over the sand at high speed. Behind him, the base prepared its few defenses. Ahead, the massive form of Sun waited. He stopped the bike 50 meters from the giant worm. Sun's huge head turned toward him, sensing his presence. "Hello, big friend," Juan said, activating the neural implants. The connection formed immediately, stronger than before. Juan felt the ancient mind of the worm touching his thoughts, not with words, but with feelings and instincts. Juan sent images of the Krell, danger, enemies, prey. Sun understood. The great worm turned toward the Krell army. Juan climbed back on his bike. "Let's go hunt," he said. He rode toward the Krell, Sun moving beside him. The giant worm slid over the sand faster than Juan's bike could travel. He pushed the engine to keep up. The Krell spotted them. Their front line stopped. Even these fearless warriors seemed unsure when faced with a 100-meter predator charging toward them. "Now," Juan shouted, sending attack signals through the implant. Sun dived into the sand. The desert exploded as the worm tunneled beneath the Krell front line. Soldiers were thrown into the air. A great circle of sand collapsed, taking hundreds of Krell with it. Sun burst up through the middle of their formation. Its massive jaws swallowed dozens of soldiers in one bite. Its huge body crushed tanks and weapons. Juan circled on his bike, maintaining the connection. The plan was working. The Krell were in chaos, their neat formations broken. Then something changed. A high-pitched sound filled the air. Sun writhed in pain. The Krell had deployed sonic weapons, devices that sent painful vibrations through the sand. "No," Juan shouted. He sent calming signals to Sun, but the worm was in agony. It couldn't filter out the painful sounds that attacked its sensitive skin. Sun retreated, diving deep into the sand. The connection in Juan's mind grew weaker. A Krell soldier spotted Juan on his bike. It fired. The shot hit the bike's engine. The vehicle exploded, throwing Juan through the air. He landed hard on the sand. Pain shot through his leg. Broken. The neural device on his head cracked. The connection to Sun was gone. Krell soldiers surrounded him, their weapons aimed at his head. This was the end. Suddenly, the ground shook again. Not Sun. The Krell sonic weapons would keep the worm away. No, this was different. Alliance ships. Reinforcements. No, the rumbling came from below. The sand around Juan and the Krell began to shift. The last thing Juan saw before losing consciousness was the sand opening beneath the Krell soldiers. Something smaller than Sun, but just as deadly, erupted from below. The young Jiangmi from the cave had come to help. Juan opened his eyes to bright lights and the smell of medicine. He was in the base medical center. His leg was wrapped in a healing cast. His head throbbed with pain. "He's awake," said a familiar voice. Dr. Jin leaned over him, her face tired but smiling. "What happened?" Juan asked, his mouth dry. "The Krell. Sun. The young Jiangmi saved you," Jin said. "It killed the Krell soldiers around you, then dug a tunnel beneath you. Captain Lee found you half buried in sand 2 kilometers from the battle." "And the base?" Jin's smile faded. "The Krell pulled back after their first wave was broken by Sun, but they're regrouping. Admiral Tak thinks they'll attack again tomorrow with more sonic weapons." Juan tried to sit up. Pain shot through his body. "Easy," Jin said, pushing him back down. "You have 3 broken ribs and a fractured leg." "I need to find Sun," Juan said. "The connection was broken when my implant was damaged." "About that." Jin pulled up a chair. "While you were unconscious, you were dreaming. Talking in your sleep." "What did I say?" "Not what. How." Jin's eyes sparkled with excitement. "You made sounds, like the vibrations the Jiangmi used to communicate. And look at this." She showed him a brain scan on her tablet. Parts of Juan's brain were lit up in unusual patterns. "Your neural pathways have changed," Jin explained. "The connection with Sun altered your brain somehow. Is that bad?" "No. It's fascinating." Jin touched the screen, showing a different image. "This is a fossil skull of an ancient human ancestor, found on Earth. Look at the unusual brain structure here." Juan saw the similarity. "What does it mean?" "I think humans and Jiangmi might share a past," Jin said. "Maybe millions of years ago on Earth, before humans evolved into what we are now, our ancestors had some kind of relationship with the Jiangmi or creatures like them." "That's hard to believe." "Is it?" Jin asked. "How else do you explain your ability to connect with them? Why do they respond to you specifically?" Juan thought about it. The connection with Sun had felt familiar somehow, like remembering something very old. "While you were dreaming," Jin continued, "I made new implants for you, stronger ones, based on your brain patterns. If I'm right, you can form an even deeper bond with Sun." She showed him 2 small devices. They looked different from the military implants, more organic with flowing lines. "The Krell will attack at dawn," Jin said. "Admiral Tak plans to evacuate the non-combat personnel tonight. The rest will make a last stand. Unless we can bring Sun back," Juan said. Jin nodded. "Even then, the odds are bad. The Krell know about the worm now. They'll be prepared." Juan looked at the new implants. "Help me up. We need to try." The sun was setting when they reached the same spot where Juan had first met Sun. His leg hurt, but he could walk with a crutch. Jin watched nervously as he placed the new implants on his temples. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. Your body is still weak. We have no choice, Juan said. He activated the devices. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming. His mind expanded, connecting not just to the desert around them, but deep below. He could feel the vibrations of small animals moving through sand hundreds of meters away. Jin, he whispered. I can sense them. All of them. All of what? The Jangmi. Dozens of them, deep below us. Juan closed his eyes, focusing. Sun is there too, in pain from the sonic weapons, but alive. Juan sent his thoughts deeper, calling to Sun, not with words, but with feelings. Images from his dreams, ancient memories that weren't his own. The ground began to shake, sand shifted, but Sun didn't appear. Instead, Juan saw images in his mind, not his thoughts, but sent to him. He saw Earth millions of years ago, small proto-humans living alongside massive worm creatures, working together to hunt, to survive. They were there, Juan said in wonder. On Earth, the Jangmi and humans, before we evolved into what we are now. We were partners. The connection grew stronger. Juan felt Sun's mind touching his across the distance. The great worm was afraid of the sonic weapons, but willing to fight. Then Juan realized something else. Sun wasn't alone. Jin, he said, opening his eyes. We need to get back to base. Now. Did it work? Did you reach Sun? Juan smiled. Yes, and not just Sun. I've reached all of them. Admiral Tak stared at Juan as if he had grown a second head. Let me understand, Tak said slowly. You want us to turn off our shield generators, wait for the Krell to get close, and then hope your worm friends save us. The command room was packed with officers. Everyone looked tired after the first day of battle. The base had lost 20 soldiers already. Not hope, sir, Juan said. I know they will come. Your connection with one worm nearly got you killed, Captain Lee pointed out. Now you want to try with many. Dr. Jin stepped forward. Admiral, the new implants are working. Juan's brain patterns show complete neural sync with the Jangmi communication system. Tak rubbed his face. We have 4 hours until dawn. The Krell will attack with everything they have. And we have no way to stop them, Juan said, unless we try my plan. The room fell silent. Everyone knew he was right. Their weapons could not stop a full Krell assault. Finally, Tak nodded. We'll do it your way, Lieutenant, but we keep half our shields up as backup. Thank you, sir, Juan said. Get some rest, Tak ordered. You'll need your strength. Juan couldn't sleep. He sat on the base wall, looking out at the desert. The 3 moons of Sunwa 7 cast silver light on the sand. In the distance, the lights of the Krell camp burned like evil stars. Nervous? Dr. Jin asked, sitting beside him. Wouldn't you be? Juan smiled weakly. Tomorrow I ask ancient worm monsters to fight for us. You've seen the connection. You know it's real. Juan touched the implants on his temples. It's not just a connection anymore. It's memories. They're memories. Our shared past. Tell me, Jin said. Earth was different then. Warmer. The proto-humans were small, vulnerable. The Jangmi protected them from larger predators. In return, humans helped the Jangmi find food. Juan looked up at the stars. Then something happened. A great cold. The Jangmi had to go deep underground to survive. Humans had to change, evolve differently. And they forgot each other, Jin finished. Until now. Not completely forgot, Juan said. There are stories on Earth about great dragons who lived in the ground. Myths about people who could speak to giant beasts. You're the first in millions of years to renew the bond, Jin said. If we survive tomorrow, this changes everything. Dawn came too quickly. The Krell army moved forward at first light. Thousands of soldiers, hundreds of tanks, and dozens of ships filled the desert before the base. They're not holding anything back. Captain Lee said from the command center. Juan stood on the highest point of the base. The new implants hummed with power. He closed his eyes. I need you, he sent through the connection. All of you. Through the implants, he felt Sun's answer. The great worm was far away, hiding from the sonic weapons. But it hurt him. It remembered the ancient bond. They have weapons that hurt you, Juan sent. But together we can fight, like our ancestors did. He felt hesitation, fear, then something else, determination. Not just from Sun, but from others. Many others. Shield generators powering down in sectors 3 through 7, came the announcement. All personnel, prepare for attack. The Krell front line reached the marker, 1 kilometer from the base. Their tanks fired the first shots. Explosions rocked the walls. Lieutenant, Tak's voice came through the comm. If your friends are coming, now would be good. Juan sent one final message through the bond. Not words, not even images, just pure emotion. Need. Alliance. The memory of humans and Jiangmi hunting together, protecting each other. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the desert began to move. Not in one place. Not in 10. In dozens of places, the sand rose up. Great shapes burst through, red scales gleaming in the morning light. Sun came first, the largest of them all. But it was not alone. 20, 30, then 40 massive Jiangmi rose from the desert floor. They emerged in a circle around the Krell army. Some were small, only 10 or 20 meters long. Others rivaled Sun in size. The Krell stopped advancing. Even their fearless soldiers seemed stunned by the sight. Now, Juan shouted, both with his voice and through the bond. As one, the Jiangmi attacked. They dove into the sand and burst up under the Krell lines. They crushed tanks in powerful jaws. They collapsed the ground beneath the enemy ships. The Krell fired their sonic weapons. Some Jiangmi retreated from the pain. But there were too many worms, attacking from too many directions. From the base, the Alliance soldiers watched in amazement as the ancient predators tore through the enemy that had nearly conquered the galaxy. It's working, Dr. Jin whispered. It's actually working. For the first time in the long war, the Krell were the ones being hunted. 2 days after the battle, ships arrived from Alliance Command. Not the small reinforcements Tak had requested, but a fleet of 20 large vessels. The most senior officers of the Alliance stepped onto Sunwa 7's dusty surface, their eyes wide with disbelief as they witnessed Sun and 3 other Jiangmi patrolling the desert perimeter. Impossible, whispered General Back, the highest-ranking officer in the Alliance military. When we received Admiral Tak's report, we thought it was a mistake or a desperate lie. Juan stood at attention beside Admiral Tak as they greeted the visitors. His implants hummed softly, maintaining his connection to the Jiangmi. Not a lie, sir, Tak said. Lieutenant Kim has done what none of us thought possible. He turned the tide of the battle. General Back studied Juan closely. You control these creatures? No, sir, Juan replied. We work together. It's a partnership, not control. Show me, Back ordered. The demonstration took place in the afternoon. Alliance scientists and officers gathered on a viewing platform. Juan stood in the desert below with Sun curled around him protectively. The massive worm's head rested on the sand near Juan's feet, its sensing organs pulsing gently. Through the implants, Juan sent images and feelings. Sun responded instantly, moving in perfect coordination with Juan's thoughts. When Krell prisoners were brought out, Sun displayed aggressive posture, but did not attack without Juan's signal. The neural connection is two-way, Dr. Jin explained to the visitors. Lieutenant Kim can sense what the Jiangmi sense, vibrations through the sand, heat signatures, even air pressure changes. And the other worms? Asked a scientist. There are 47 adult Jiangmi on Sunwa 7, Jin said. Juan has established primary connection with 12 so far. The rest follow Sun's lead. General Back turned to Admiral Tak. The Alliance has lost 42 systems to the Krell. Can these creatures help us take them back? Tak nodded. I believe they can, sir. 1 week later, Alliance headquarters was transformed. The central command room now featured a massive holographic display showing all known Krell-occupied systems. Juan stood before it, surrounded by senior officers and scientists. We've identified 17 planets with conditions similar to Sunwa 7, reported Dr. Min, the Alliance's chief xenobiologist. She had arrived with the fleet and immediately joined Jin's research team. If Lieutenant Kim's theory is correct, they may all have dormant Jangmi populations. And humans can bond with them, asked General Vac. Not all humans, Jin said. We've tested 50 volunteers. Only 8 showed the neural compatibility Lieutenant Kim has, but that's enough to begin. Juan studied the map. The Jangmi share ancestral memories. If we can awaken one group and establish the bond, they can help us communicate with others. General Back nodded, making his decision. We're calling it Operation Earthworm. Lieutenant Kim. No, Commander Kim now. You will lead the first team to Terrace 3. It's the closest planet with potential Jangmi inhabitants. What about the Krell, sir? Juan asked. They'll adapt to the Jangmi, develop new weapons against them. That's why we must move quickly, Vac said. Strike at multiple systems before they can prepare. As the meeting ended, Dr. Jin pulled Juan aside. There's something else you should know. I've analyzed the ancient memories you described, humans and Jangmi working together on Earth. What about them? There are cave paintings on Earth, in Australia and Africa, that match exactly what you described. Images no one could explain before. People communicating with giant serpent creatures. Jin's eyes were bright with excitement. This isn't just about winning a war, Juan. This is about rediscovering a lost chapter of human history. Juan nodded. Through his bond with Sun, he could feel the worm's contentment as it rested beneath the sand outside the base. Their partnership felt both new and ancient at the same time. Commander Kim. A young officer approached. Your team is assembled. They're waiting to meet you. Juan looked once more at the star map, at all the worlds that had fallen to the Krell. Soon, those worlds would see something the Krell never expected. Humans riding on massive worm predators, awakening an alliance millions of years in the making. For the first time since the war began, victory seemed possible. 1 year later, Commander Juan Kim stood on a hill overlooking the ruins of what had once been the Krell's largest base on planet Dorada. His uniform now carried the special insignia of the Jangmi Corps, a stylized worm wrapped around a human hand. Beside him, Dr. Jin watched as Alliance soldiers secured the area. Hard to believe it's only been a year, Jin said. So much has changed. Juan nodded. Through his enhanced implants, he felt Sun's presence beneath the ground, along with 5 other adult Jangmi that had accompanied them to this world. Their thoughts brushed against his mind like gentle waves. The Krell never expected this, Juan said. Their whole strategy was based on our known weapons, our known tactics. In the valley below, a massive red shape moved through the dust. Commander Han's Jangmi partner, Moon. Han had been one of the first 8 humans with compatible neural patterns. Now there were over 100 human handlers paired with Jangmi from 12 different worlds. Message from Alliance Command, Captain Lee said, approaching with a tablet. He had insisted on joining Juan's team after Sunwa 7. The Krell have requested peace talks. They're surrendering, Jin asked in surprise. Lee shook his head. Not yet, but their high command wants to meet. They're offering to withdraw from 30 systems if we stop our advance. They're afraid, Juan said. He could feel Sun's agreement rumbling through their bond. For the first time, the Krell no fear. The peace conference took place on a neutral space station near the border of Krell space. Representatives from all 17 Alliance species gathered in the Great Hall. Juan stood with Admiral Tak and General Back as the Krell delegation entered. The insectoid aliens moved on 4 legs, their upper limbs carrying ceremonial staffs. Their compound eyes surveyed the room with nervous movements. When they spotted Juan with his implants, they chittered anxiously among themselves. "The human who speaks to the Earth Eaters," said the lead Krell through a translation device. "Our scientists said it was impossible. Yet here we are," General Back replied. "You've seen what the Jangmi can do. You've lost 63 battle groups to them in the past year." The Krell leader's antennae twitched. "We cannot fight both your Alliance technology and these ancient predators. Our hive mind has decided. We will withdraw from all conquered systems and return to our original territory. After 3 years of brutal war, after millions of deaths and countless worlds devastated, the conflict was ending. Not with a final battle, but with the Krell admitting defeat." As the formal surrender was signed, Juan stepped away from the proceedings. Through his bond, he shared the moment with Sun and the other Jangmi across the galaxy. Their collective consciousness hummed with satisfaction. 1 month later, Juan stood on a platform before a vast crowd on Earth. The new Jangmi Research Center sprawled behind him, a massive complex built to study the ancient bond between humans and the great worms. Sun had been transported to Earth for the ceremony, the giant predator now a symbol of humanity's special place in the galaxy. "Commander Kim," said the Alliance president, "your discovery has not only saved us from the Krell, but has revealed a connection to our distant past. Today, we honor you and all the Jangmi handlers who turned the tide of war." As Juan accepted the Alliance's highest medal, he felt Sun's pride mingling with his own. But his thoughts were already turning to the future. "This is just the beginning," he said to the crowd. "The Jangmi have shared memories of other worlds, other ancient partnerships waiting to be renewed. Humanity's place in the galaxy was never just about our technology or our determination. It was about our ability to form bonds, to see allies where others saw only monsters." That evening, as the 3 moons of Earth rose over the new Jangmi sanctuary, Juan sat beside Sun's massive form. The great worm's head rested near him, sensing organs pulsing gently in contentment. Through their bond, Juan sent images of stars yet unexplored. Sun responded with ancient memories of other creatures, other worlds where Jangmi had once traveled. Together, human and worm looked up at the night sky. The war was over. The exploration was just beginning. The sacred partnership, millions of years in the making, had been renewed, and the galaxy would never be the same.